We need answers to some important questions. How corrupt is the Maliki government? Is corruption undermining the chances for political reconciliation? Henry Waxman, U.S. Congress.
Welcome back to Inside Iraq. We are discussing the alleged investigation by the U.S. military of senior U.S. military commanders for alleged corruption and misuse of money with Mahdi al-Hafiz and Patrick Coburn. Mahdi al-Hafiz, Iraq right now is, according to Transparency International, is at the top of corrupt countries. To what extent the corruption caused and perhaps practiced by the U.S. military somehow was contagious into the Iraqi body politics as well as Iraqi politics?
Yes, actually, this problem is a very serious one in Iraq. And I remember very well that Iraq has been placed on the last list of names issued by the Transparency Organization. In my opinion, that this problem is not possible to be controlled, and this is one of the reasons that the current state in Iraq is still not really unified, and many problems can come because of this question of division of powers. I think that unless there is one state with one authority, it is not possible to control the corruption. During the past period, there has been a lot of talk on how to curb the corruption, but unfortunately that was not possible, as there is a number of centers of powers which are going to protect those who are claimed to be part of this corruption. In my opinion, this cannot be done in this way unless the whole authority of the state is restored and where the state can play a role. Without this, it is impossible to think that Iraq can play any important role in the future.
Patrick, you mentioned this would not have happened without the knowledge and consent and perhaps even the blessing of the senior officers at the Pentagon, and perhaps companies like Halliburton and Kellogg Brown contributed to this. Given we have a new president, a squeaky clean, Mr. Obama, why do you think he said he will not go back and investigate senior U.S. officials in the corruption scandal?
Well, I suppose that they feel it would be damaging to America, that they would be, the Democrats and Obama would be seen as seeking revenge on the Republicans. I think it's unfortunate, because this was corruption of an extraordinary dimensions. It went right from the bottom. One story of there was a little scheme to restart Iraqi boxing. Somebody gave a lot of money in $100 bills to an American army sergeant. He gambled it away, but they couldn't prosecute him because nobody had written down whether that cash was $20,000 or $40,000 or $60,000. I mean, this is a tiny example, but this goes right through the whole system at that time, that there was no accounting. Nobody knew where the money was going. Nobody knew what was being built. And of course, this was true in 2003, and then we got, as the years went by, because security collapsed, it was almost impossible to check whether somebody had actually built what they said they were building. But how were you going to send inspectors out there? You'd also have American companies that would sign a big contract and then they'd immediately subcontract to various Iraqi companies. So they'd just take the money and not do anything themselves. So Iraq is full of projects that were supposedly built, that nothing much has happened, that nobody quite knows what was delivered and what wasn't. Sometimes companies have said, oh, we supplied those computers, we supplied that equipment. When somebody finally got there, they find it just isn't there. It was never delivered.
Mahdi, let me read you a little comment by one of the readers of the independent newspaper. It goes like this. From the day the Baghdad Museum of Antiquities was plundered while the oil ministry was guarded, we knew that the whole war, though bloody, was never for freedom and democracy, but for the wrecking and plundering of Iraq with impunity and the hoodwinking of the U.S., international and Iraqi public. To what extent this divergity, this paying attention to the oil ministry and not paying attention to the Iraqi museum created this mindset that anything in Iraq is possible.
Yes, you see, I think you are right. There has been a lot of talk and rumors about this because everybody was witnessing what has been happening in the streets against the museum, against a number of offices, and even it has been well known everywhere that the American troops are not able to do anything because their authority was limited to certain things. In my opinion, that was a major mistake, which led at the end to a problem with the Iraqi people, and also it has created a number of disorder in the country. In my opinion, that looting at that time was not less harmful than the other problems which the Iraq was suffering as a result of the occupation.
Let us give credit where credit is due. Although this war was illegal, and yet the Bush administration went out of its way to allocate enormous sums of money for the reconstruction of Iraq, perhaps to recreate Iraq in the image of the United States. It is a sad irony, isn't it?
They came to Iraq without any plan, and everybody was asking what they are going to do. I remember very well from the first days of their presence in Iraq. Yeah. And in my opinion, that was really creating many serious problems for the people. If you want to rule this country, you have to come with a plan. In my opinion, that was a big mistake, and also put the whole country in some sort of chaos. This has to be stopped, and in my opinion, now we are, of course, in different situation, and I hope that we can make this change possible.
Patrick, this is my final question to you. How high this investigation will go, and will it net a big U.S. military?
I think it will go much higher than before. I think it will focus on people who were awarding contracts in Baghdad in the early days of the occupation. Whether they'll be able to successfully prosecute them is a slightly different question. But I think that for the first time, they're targeting the people who were in a position to award these enormous contracts that are now alleged to be corrupt.
Patrick Coburn, Mahdi al-Hafiz, gentlemen, thank you for being guests on Inside Iraq. To access the show and to send us your comments, please go to aljazeera.net/English. We have reached the end of this show. Join me next week when we take another look inside Iraq. Until then, have a great week.